Okay, the first thing we're going to do is stay stitch around the neck. And we're going to repeat this for the fronts, the backs, for the lining and the dress. This is the back. Now we are going to put our pleats in, and you're going to fold on the dotted line, give it a little crease, and then fold it to meet the solid line. Now the front has 2 pleats in it, the back only has 1. You're going to pin it in place, and you're going to repeat that for the fronts, the backs, for the dress and the lining. Okay, so now that we have all of our tucks pinned in, we're going to stitch across the bottom to hold them in at the seam line. So now we have our pleats stitched in and holding. We're going to repeat that for the backs. And repeat that for the linings. Now we're going to stitch the shoulder seams. You place the front sides together, the back on the front, and we're going to stitch across the shoulder seam. Going to repeat that for the other side. And these seams will get ironed open. So you're going to open them up and iron them flat. Now we have our bodice ironed, seams open at the shoulders. We're going to work on our collar now. And I have marked the pleats on the collar, and we're going to fold the collar in half, and we're going to pin and stitch each end. And then we'll do the other end. Now we're going to clip the threads and the corners. And we're going to trim one seam down about halfway so the seam lays flat. And we'll repeat that for the other side. Now we're going to go and turn this right side out at the ironing board. So this is my little ironing board, and we are going to take the collar and we're going to turn it. The edges here, the ends, we're going to open up those seams and we're going to kind of finger press that seam open. then we're going to turn it right side out. And we're going to get it just a little bit of a poke here with my little turning thing. And then the edge is nice and crisp. And we're going to iron the edge. And then we're going to turn it around and do the other side. Open up the seam, give it a little finger press, turn it, and give it a little poke out. Just be careful not to poke through the fabric. And then we're going to press it. Now we're going to take the whole thing and fold it in half and press the entire length of the collar. And now we're going to go to where we marked the pleats, and we're going to fold on the dotted line and bring it to the center solid line, just like that. And then we're going to pin it. Then we're going to do the same for the other side. Bring them together in the middle and pin it. And then we're going to iron this pleat right here, where just at the bottom part, where the pins are. And I use glass-headed pins so they don't melt when you iron over them. There. So we have a nice flat pleat here, but we didn't iron up here because I don't want to crease that. And then we'll repeat for the other side. So now we have our pleats ironed in and pinned in. We're going to stay stitch across the whole bottom of this collar to hold those pleats and to stabilize the seam of the collar. Go. So now we're going to attach the collar, but first we're going to clip the neck seam, and we're going to clip it around about a ½ inch or so around, ½ inch spacing down to where your stay stitching is, and we're going to continue around the neck. So we have a clipped neck. This is going to lay out flatter so it's easier to put the collar on. And we're going to repeat that for the lining. Now that our neckline is clipped, we are going to pin the collar. The wrong side of the collar faces the right side of the bodice, and the pleats will line up with the shoulder seams. And we will be matching the notches. The back of the collar lines up with the center back seam, which is a 1/2 inch from the back edge of the bodice. Going to match up the notches. Got it pinned on. So now we have the collar all pinned on. We're going to baste it on, stitch it onto the neckline. On the stay stitching line. Now our collar is basted on, and we are going to take the lining and pin it on to the other side of the collar, lining up the notches and the shoulder seams like we did with the collar. So we have our lining. So now we have the lining pinned on. We are going to stitch on the same line we stitched before. We're going to stitch this lining on. Now our lining is sewn on. Now we are going to trim the seam around the neck. We're going to cut the lining down to about 1/8 of an inch from the seam line. And then after that is done, we're going to trim one of the collars right above it. And what you want to do is, we're going to cut the notches off, is you want to grate this so it's each layer is a different length, so it lays flat when you turn it, and we're going to do that all the way around the neckline. So now each layer is at a different level, and it's going to lay nice and flat when we turn it. So we're going to take the lining and fold it up, and we're going to kind of press it with your finger, make it nice and flat, give it a crease there. And we're going to do that all the way around. And now we're going to turn this to the inside, and that collar is going to kind of poke up, and we're going to press the other side with our fingers. And then when we're done with that, we'll take that to the ironing board and press that nice and flat and then the collar will fold back down. So here we are at the ironing board. We're going to iron this flat. We're going to iron that up, and we're going to iron all the way around the collar, making that seam nice and flat. We're not going to go too far up in the collar because we don't want to iron in any wrinkles in the collar. And you're just going to work your way around until it is ironed flat. And there is nice ironed flat